The only workable solution, which the Trump administration is now pursuing, is to force these borrowers, no matter how sympathetic or unsympathetic they may be, to pay their debts. We began the show by talking about the Muslim socialist who's just won the Democrat primary to become the next mayor of New York City. Ran on a platform of legalized theft, as all socialists do. The wealthiest New Yorkers will be forced to pay for everybody else's groceries and rent and sex changes, right up until the moment that those wealthy New Yorkers leave and the city collapses. And we become so familiar with this kind of crass transactional politics where con artists are elected to public office simply by promising to give away other people's money. It's worth highlighting the rare moments when the opposite happens. Believe it or not, indeed, there are occasions in which elected officials in the United States tell people to take some responsibility for their lives instead of becoming entirely dependent on handouts from taxpayers. It sounds like absurdist fiction as cities like New York descend into third world status, but contrary to all expectations, sometimes there is accountability in this country. And at the moment, the tens of millions of Americans who took out student loans to go to college are coming to this realization the hard way. After years of extensions and promises that their loans would be forgiven, meaning paid by taxpayers, the Trump administration is starting to collect. They're garnishing wages and destroying the credit scores of anyone who refuses to pay. This is a major victory for the rule of law in this country, as we'll discuss in a second. Here's the Wall Street Journal quote. Nearly 2 million student loan borrowers are at risk of having their wages garnished this summer. Roughly 6 million federal student loan borrowers are 90 days or more past due after a pandemic-era reprieve ended, according to TransUnion. The credit reporting company estimates that about a third of them, of nearly 2 million borrowers, could move into default in July and start having their pay docked by the government. An additional 1 million borrowers are on track to default by August, followed by another 2 million in September. The Education Department restarted collections on defaulted student loans in May, something it hadn't done since before the pandemic. The department sent notices to borrowers saying their tax refunds and federal benefits could be withheld starting in June if they don't take steps to resume payments. Until past due payments are paid in full or the default status is resolved, borrowers could see up to 15% of the wages automatically deducted from their paychecks, close quote. Now, in order for contracts and loans to have any meaning, this is what needs to happen. People who borrow money after explicitly promising to repay that money shouldn't have any choice in the matter. They have to pay back their debts with interest. It doesn't matter what sob story you come up with. People who make legally binding promises should be forced to keep those promises or else suffer the consequences. If we suspend that system, right, as we have done, 3 things happen. None of them are good. First, private loans become much harder to obtain because no one's going to lend to anyone with a remotely suspicious credit profile. People will have much more difficulty acquiring cars, homes, and so on. Secondly, federally funded loans will become yet another unsustainable form of welfare that we can't afford. And third, tuition will continue to increase across the board since schools might as well draw whatever they can from the Treasury. So it just makes the problem worse. And in the process, that makes higher education even more unaffordable. But there's another reason to support the Trump administration's collection efforts, which is that it will punish some of the absolute worst people in this country in a very direct and tangible way. You take a look at social media and see how people are talking about their student loans right now. It turns out that once you give people an extension, they want to make that extension permanent. They start concocting ways to get out of their obligations. Now that, they sense weakness on the part of the debt collectors, the government in this case. Who could have imagined that? It's almost as if you want an orderly functioning society, you can't grant exceptions. You have to hold people to their promises. Otherwise, you get videos like this. Watch.
So as of today, student loans that are in default have basically went into collections and wage garnishments are into effect. The question is, can you dispute these collections? Yes, you can, and it is your right, and I'm going to tell you what to ask for. The first thing you're going to ask for is the full chain of custody with assignment agreements. The second thing you're going to ask for is the original master promissory note with your wet signature or virtual logs. The third thing you're going to ask for is the breakdown of itemized charges with evidence of accrual. The good news is I have a dispute letter where you could actually escalate with the CFPB as well. I made this very simple for everyone. If you go to the link in my profile, you're going to see where it says, buy me a coffee. The dispute letter is going to be right there for you to use. Or I could customize it for you myself. You're going to see where it says, upload your credit report, and I will customize your dispute letters for you.
He's being a little coy, but the idea is fairly clear. He's encouraging people to bombard the federal government with paperwork requests in the hopes that the bureaucratic process will delay collections. None of the people who engage in this kind of deception are contesting the legitimacy of their student loans. That's very clear from the comments on this video. They're just looking to delay as much as possible. You know that crappy feeling you get sometimes like you're being watched while browsing online? Well, here's the thing. You actually are. Every time you hop on the internet, your service provider can see literally everything you do. And get this, in the US, they can legally sell your entire browsing history. Yeah, even in the incognito browsing isn't private after all. Who would have thought? That's why I started using ExpressVPN. It's the brilliant app that encrypts everything I do online and routes it through secure servers. Since I started using it, my internet provider can't see any of my browsing history, which means they've got nothing to sell because they've got nothing on me. But here's what I really love about ExpressVPN. It also hides my IP address, so those annoying data brokers can't build a profile about me to sell to advertisers. Plus, it's incredibly user-friendly. You don't have to be a tech wizard to use it. They've made it so simple that even your kids could figure it out. All you have to do is tap one button to get protected. They've got apps for all your devices, and it's rated #1 by CNET, The Verge, and other major tech reviewers. Find out how you can get 4 months free by scanning the QR code on screen, clicking the link in the description box below, or by using expressvpn.com/MattWalshShow. Other videos that are also popular make this tactic really explicit. Here's one of them.
I was curious what was happening with that student loan situation, that on May 5th, student loans after 5 years since COVID, people are going to be put, sent to collections if they don't start paying as of May 5th. Well, here's an update to that. So here's what the Associated Press is saying is that millions of Americans have already seen their credit scores be downgraded because of their default in their loan status. Wage garnishments will start at the end of this summer. They said 90 days after May 5th is when that'll officially start, which looks to be the first week of August. So that's coming. There's already been reports of people on social media saying that their tax refund is being withheld because of this. Oh, what if, hypothetically, with the crazy success of the No Kings protest, what if we were able to get 1 million student loan borrowers together to start contacting these agencies that have been defunded, staff have been cut, and are currently strained for resources because of our current dictator? What if we were able to overwhelm these systems? Would we be able to delay them from reporting student loan borrowers to collections? Could that be done? Could we do that?
Think about the psychology at play in a video like this. Leftists recognize that the federal bureaucracy is one of their most important assets. The corruption and manufactured inefficacy gives them enormous power. It's been the norm for generations. And now that the Trump administration, unlike pretty much every other administration in recent history, has gutted the bureaucracy, the left still hasn't moved on. They still think in terms of how the bureaucracy, or lack thereof, can help them cheat the system. So they're openly talking about flooding the federal government with fraudulent documentation, all to avoid paying back debts that they agreed to pay back a long time ago. Now, notice there's no gratitude here. There's no sense of appreciation for the fact that that their repayments were frozen for half a decade. They don't care about that. All they're thinking about is how to steal some more money. There's never any sense of personal responsibility in any context. In every single case, the moment you give a leftist something free, they will demand even more free stuff, and they won't stop until you force them to stop, or until the entire economy is destroyed. It's an ironclad rule. It's also the lesson of the great prophetic text called "If You Give a Mouse a Cookie." Now, that said, sure, it's reasonable to have some sympathy for student loan borrowers. I've always agreed with their central complaint, actually, which is that they got ripped off and they were sold an education that isn't worth nearly as much as they paid for it. In fact, in many cases, is worth nothing at all. Anyone who's been paying attention to the state of higher education in the last 10 years knows that. These people bought a bad product, and now they're dealing with the consequences of their decision. But loan forgiveness was never the solution to that problem. It, again, only makes the problem worse. It's a surefire way to make the problem much worse in every respect. It creates an incentive for colleges to charge more while also encouraging whiny leftists to scam the federal government. The only workable solution, which the Trump administration is now pursuing, is to force these borrowers, no matter how sympathetic or unsympathetic they may be, to pay their debts. That's how you save the next generation from committing to a lifetime of poverty to pursue a degree in Black British literature from Vassar. As is often the case, the seemingly inhumane approach is actually the most humane in the end. And that is why everyone scheming to avoid repaying their student loans, even after the Trump administration has begun garnishing wages to collect payments, are today canceled. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.